Captain Jake Morrison stood at the window of his ship's bridge and looked out at the stars. He had been captain of the UES Defiance for 3 years now. It was a good ship with a good crew. Today should have been like any other day in space. But the message that came through the communication system changed everything. The voice of Communications Officer Linda Garcia broke the quiet of the bridge. "Captain, we have an urgent message from Earth Command. It's marked as Priority 1. Jake turned from the window and walked to his command chair. "Put it on the main screen, Linda." The screen lit up with the official seal of Earth Command. Then Admiral Lisa Carter appeared on the screen. Her face looked serious and worried. Jake had known the Admiral for many years. He had never seen her look this troubled before. "Attention all ship commanders." Admiral Carter began. "I am sending you an official message from the Galactic Council. This message was delivered to Earth 1 hour ago. All human ship captains must read and understand what it says." The Admiral's face disappeared and was replaced by text. Jake read the words slowly. His hands gripped the arms of his chair tighter with each line. "To the human species of Sol System, the Galactic Council has voted on Resolution 2847. This resolution concerns human military vessels and their continued operation in galactic space. After careful study of recent combat actions involving human ships, the Council has decided that human military vessels pose an unacceptable threat to galactic peace and stability." Jake felt his stomach drop. He kept reading. "All human military ships must be decommissioned immediately. Human crews will surrender their vessels to Council inspection teams within 30 standard days. These ships will then be destroyed under Council supervision. Failure to comply will result in the complete isolation of human space from the galactic community." The message continued with technical details about surrender procedures. Jake stopped reading and looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at the screen in shock. Nobody spoke for a long moment. "Sir," said Lieutenant Commander Bill Stevens, the ship's tactical officer. "What does this mean exactly?" Jake rubbed his forehead. "It means they want us to give up our ships." "Bill, all of them." "But why?" asked Linda Garcia. "What did we do wrong?" Before Jake could answer, Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen again. She looked tired and angry at the same time. "I know you all have questions," the Admiral said. "Let me explain what led to this decision. 3 weeks ago, Captain Susan Blake and her task force encountered Keth pirates near the Vega system. The pirates had 20 ships. Our people had 3 destroyers." Jake remembered hearing about that battle. The report said it went well for the humans. "The battle lasted 47 minutes, Admiral Carter continued. "When it was over, all 20 pirate ships were either destroyed or disabled. Our ships took no damage, no human casualties." The Council received detailed reports about this engagement from several sources. The Admiral paused and took a deep breath. "According to the Council, this battle proved that human ships are too dangerous to exist alongside other species' vessels. They say our weapons are too powerful and our tactics too aggressive." Jake felt anger building in his chest. The Keth pirates had been attacking merchant ships for months. Human forces had simply done their job and protected innocent people. The Council speaker, an alien named Vorthka, sent a personal message to President Davis. Admiral Carter went on. He said that human ships are not normal warships. He called them weapons of mass destruction disguised as military vessels. He said one human cruiser could defeat entire fleets from any Council race. Linda Garcia spoke up. "But Captain Blake's people were just defending themselves. The pirates attacked first." "That doesn't matter to the Council," Admiral Carter replied. "They've analyzed our ship designs and combat records. They say we build ships differently than everyone else in the galaxy. They say we fight wars differently too, and they're afraid of what that means." Jake thought about his own ship. The Defiance was a heavy cruiser built in the orbital yards. Above Earth, it carried missile launchers, plasma cannons, and kinetic weapons. The ship's armor was thick and its shields were strong. But Jake had never thought of it as especially dangerous compared to what other species might build. "What about our allies?" asked Bill Stevens. "Surely some Council races will support us." Admiral Carter shook her head. The vote was unanimous. Every Council race agreed. The Zanari, who usually support diplomatic solutions, voted yes. The Fallen, traders who make money from human business, voted yes. Even the Grix warriors, who respect strength, voted yes. They're all scared of us. The Admiral's image flickered as the transmission continued. Dr. Peter Hayes, our ambassador to the Council, tried to negotiate. He explained that we only fight to protect ourselves and our friends. He showed them records of human ships defending alien merchants from pirates. None of it mattered. Jake felt sick. Humanity had worked for 50 years to join the galactic community. They had followed Council laws and traded fairly with alien species. Human ships had fought alongside Council forces against common enemies, and now they were being cast out because they were too good at fighting. The Council gave us 30 days, Admiral Carter said. If we don't surrender our ships by then, they will cut off all contact with human space. No trade, no communication, no access to the jump gates that connect the galaxy. We would be completely alone. The transmission ended and the bridge fell silent. Jake looked at his crew. These were good people who had served humanity well. They deserved better than this. Captain, said Linda Garcia quietly, what are we going to do? Jake stood up from his chair and walked back to the window. Outside, the stars looked the same as always, but everything had changed. The galaxy that had seemed so full of opportunity now felt hostile and unwelcoming. I don't know yet, Linda, Jake said, but I know one thing. We didn't build these ships to threaten anyone. We built them to protect what we care about, and that hasn't changed. He turned back to his crew. Send a message to all department heads. We're having a meeting in 1 hour. Everyone needs to understand what's happening. As his crew went to work, Jake remained at the window, thinking about the choice humanity now faced. They could surrender their ships and hope the galaxy would treat them fairly, or they could refuse and face the consequences either way. Jake realized nothing would ever be the same again. The 30-day countdown had begun. President Helen Davis sat at the head of the long table in the emergency meeting room. Deep under the White House, the room was filled with the most important military and political leaders on Earth. Everyone looked worried and tired. They had been meeting for 6 hours straight, trying to decide what to do about the Galactic Council's demand. Let me make sure everyone understands the situation, President Davis said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly. The aliens want us to destroy every military ship we have. If we refuse, they will cut us off from the rest of the galaxy completely. General Rick Stone, the head of Earth's ground forces, slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. We saved their trade routes from pirates. We've been good allies to every Council race, and this is how they repay us? Admiral Lisa Carter appeared on the wall screen. Speaking from her flagship in orbit around Mars, Rick is right to be angry, but we need to think clearly about our options. If we fight, we'll be facing the combined fleets of 8 different alien species. Dr. Maria Santos, the chief engineer who designed most of Earth's newest ships, pulled up a holographic display in the center of the table. Before we decide anything, you all need to understand why they're so scared of us. Double quotes the display showed technical drawings of human and alien ships side by side. The differences were obvious even to people who weren't engineers. Look at this, Dr. Santos said, pointing to an alien cruiser. The Zanari build their ships like flying cities, beautiful, elegant, with lots of empty space inside. Their weapons are designed for long-range duels between single ships. Very civilized and predictable. She switched to show a human cruiser. It looked smaller but much more solid. Our ships are built like weapons. Every space is used for something important: armor, weapons, engines, or crew survival systems. Nothing is wasted. Secretary of Defense Paul Martinez leaned forward. What about their actual fighting ability? Dr. Santos smiled grimly. That's where it gets interesting. Watch this simulation. The hologram showed the recent battle at Vega. 3 small human destroyers faced 20 larger alien pirate ships. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, launching waves of missiles while dodging enemy fire. The pirates used standard Keth tactics, Dr. Santos explained. Form a battle line, close to medium range, and trade shots until someone runs out of shields. It's how galactic warfare has worked for centuries. On the screen, the human ships did something completely different. They split up and attacked from 3 directions at once. Their missiles weren't just explosive warheads. They were smart weapons that could think and adapt. Captain Blake's people didn't try to outgun the pirates. Dr. Santos continued. They used electronic warfare to blind them, kinetic kill vehicles to punch through their armor, and coordinated movement to stay out of their firing arcs. President Davis watched the simulation with growing understanding. We didn't just win that battle, we made their entire way of fighting look foolish. Exactly, said Admiral Carter from the screen. And that terrifies them. For thousands of years, galactic wars have been predictable affairs. Big ships line up and shoot at each other until one side gives up. Casualties are usually light, and wars end quickly. General Stone nodded. But humans don't fight that way. We fight to win, and we use every advantage we can find. The room fell quiet as everyone thought about what this meant. Captain Susan Blake, who had been invited to speak about the Vega battle, finally broke the silence. With respect, sir, and ma'am, she said to the President and Admiral, I think we're missing the real issue here. They're not just afraid of our ships. They're afraid of how we think. Explain that, Captain. President Davis said that. Captain Blake stood up and walked to the hologram controls. May I, Dr. Santos? The engineer nodded and stepped aside. Captain Blake called up a new display showing communication records from various alien species. I've been studying Council military doctrine for 3 years, Blake said. Every race fights the same basic way. They have rules about targeting civilian areas, rules about when to surrender, rules about how to treat prisoners. War is like a game to them, with agreed-upon limits. She switched to show human military manuals. Look at our doctrine. We have one rule: protect Earth and her colonies by any means necessary. We don't start fights, but we sure as hell finish them. Secretary Martinez looked uncomfortable. Are you saying we're more violent than they are? No, sir, Blake replied. I'm saying we're more serious about it. When we fight like our species depends on it, because usually it does. President Davis stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of Washington, D.C. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware that humanity's future in space was being decided in this room. What are our real options here? She asked. Admiral Carter's voice came from the speakers. We can comply with their demands and hope they treat us fairly afterward. Or we can refuse and prepare for whatever comes next. If we comply, General Stone said, we'll be defenseless. What happens the next time pirates attack our colonies? What happens if some alien race decides they want our worlds? If we refuse, Dr. Santos added, we'll be cut off from galactic civilization. No trade, no new technology, no allies. President Davis turned back to face the room. There's a third option we haven't discussed. Everyone looked at her with curiosity. We could show them exactly why they should be afraid, she said quietly. The room was dead silent. Admiral Carter's image leaned forward on the screen. Madam President, the Admiral said carefully, are you suggesting we demonstrate our military capabilities? I'm suggesting we make it clear that being our ally is much better than being our enemy. President Davis replied, the Council wants to disarm us because they think we're dangerous. Maybe it's time we proved them right. General Stone smiled for the first time all day. I like it. The question is, President Davis continued, are we prepared to back up that position? If we refuse their demands, we need to be ready for war. Dr. Santos pulled up new ship designs on the hologram. We've been working on some new concepts. Ships designed specifically to counter Council tactics and technology. Captain Blake nodded. Our people are ready, Madam President. We didn't ask for this fight, but we won't back down from it either. President Davis looked around the room at each person. These were the leaders who would guide humanity through whatever came next. Then it's decided, she said. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity refuses to disarm. If they want our ships, they're welcome to try and take them. The 30-day countdown continued, but now humanity was preparing for war. Commander Tony Garcia stood in the control center of Alpha Centauri border station and watched the biggest alien fleet he had ever seen arrive in human space. The ships came through the jump gate in groups of 20 or 30. First came the massive Zanari dreadnoughts, each one 3 times longer than the largest human battleship. Then the fallen carrier cruisers deployed clouds of fighter drones that moved like metal insects around their mother ships. "How many is that now?" asked Lieutenant Amy Brooks, his operations officer. Tony checked his display screen. 312 ships total. 8 different species represented. This is the largest Council military operation in recorded history. The alien fleet was spreading out to surround the entire Alpha Centauri system. Tony's border station was just a small outpost with basic weapons and sensors. It was never meant to fight a fleet this size, but it had the most advanced detection equipment in human space. And Tony was using every sensor he had to study the alien formations. "Lieutenant, are you getting all this data recorded?" Tony asked. Amy nodded. "Every ship movement, every communication signal, every weapon's signature. Earth Command is going to want to see everything." Tony smiled grimly. The aliens thought they were just positioning for a blockade. They had no idea they were giving humanity a complete education. In Council military tactics, the alien fleet commander was a Zanari admiral named Korthvel. His flagship was a massive vessel called the Harmony of Stars. Tony watched as the alien ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric formations around each human world and space station. "They're doing everything by the book," Tony muttered. "Sir," Amy asked, "look at their positioning." Tony explained, pointing to his tactical display. "Classic Council doctrine. Mutual support formations, overlapping fields of fire, clear command, and control hierarchy. It's exactly what their military academies teach." Amy studied the display. "Is that bad for them?" "It means they're predictable," Tony said. "They're fighting the way they always fight, against enemies who always fight, the same way they do." The first communication from the alien fleet came 2 hours later. Admiral Korthvel's face appeared on Tony's main screen. The Zanari looked like a tall, thin human with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. He spoke in perfect English, though. His voice had a musical quality that was distinctly alien. "Commander Garcia," the alien admiral said politely. "I am Admiral Korthvel of the Combined Council Fleet. I bring greetings from the Galactic Council." Tony activated his own transmission. "Admiral, this is Commander Garcia. Welcome to Alpha Centauri space. Though I have to say your timing could be better." The alien admiral tilted his head slightly. "Commander, you should know that the Council has voted to impose a complete blockade on human space. No human vessel will be permitted to leave your territory until your military ships are surrendered for destruction." "I see," Tony replied calmly. "And what happens if we refuse?" "Then any human ship that attempts to break the blockade will be destroyed," Admiral Korthvel said. His voice remained polite, but there was steel underneath the words. Tony looked around his control center. His crew was watching the conversation with tense faces. They all knew that Earth had refused the Council's demands 3 days ago. The blockade was the Council's response. "Admiral," Tony said, "I have to ask you something. Do you really think this is going to work?" The alien admiral looked puzzled. "Commander, we have over 300 ships surrounding your systems. Your total military force consists of perhaps 50 vessels. The mathematics are quite clear." Tony almost smiled. "Mathematics can be tricky sometimes, Admiral, but I appreciate you letting me know your intentions." After the transmission ended, Amy Brooks walked over to Tony's command station. "Sir, shouldn't we be more worried about this? They have us outnumbered 6-1, Amy." Tony said quietly, "Let me show you something." He called up a tactical analysis on his private screen, one that only senior officers could access. It showed detailed information about every alien ship in the blockade fleet. "The Zanari dreadnoughts are impressive," Tony explained. "Big, powerful, heavily shielded. But look at their weapon placement. All forward-facing guns, designed for long-range slugging matches." He switched to show the Fallen carriers. The Fallen fighters are fast and maneuverable, but they're controlled by central computers on the carrier ships. Take out the carrier, and the fighters become confused. Amy was beginning to understand. "What about the Grix ships?" Tony pulled up data on the massive Angular vessels that looked like flying battering rams. The Grix are warriors, but they fight like medieval knights, honor duels, single combat, charging straight at their enemies. Very brave, but not very flexible, so they all have weaknesses, Amy said. Every military force has weaknesses, Tony replied. The problem for the Council is that they've never faced an enemy that studies weaknesses and builds tactics around exploiting them. Over the next week, Tony watched as the alien blockade settled into routine patrols. The aliens were professional and disciplined. They maintained perfect formations and followed their patrol schedules exactly. But they were also completely predictable. Tony sent daily reports to Earth Command, detailing every aspect of the alien fleet's operations. He noted that the Zanari ships powered down their secondary weapons during their rest cycles. The Fallen carriers always launched their fighters in the same patterns. The Grix battleships never varied their patrol routes. They're fighting a textbook campaign, Tony told Admiral Carter during one of their secure communications. Everything neat and orderly and by the rules. What rules? Admiral Carter asked. Their rules, Tony said. Council military doctrine assumes that both sides will fight honorably, with clear objectives and limited escalation. They're planning to maintain this blockade for months if necessary, wearing us down through economic pressure. And what happens when they discover we don't follow their rules? Tony looked out at the alien fleet through his station's main viewport. 300 ships, representing the combined military might of 8 different species. It should have been an overwhelming force. That's when things get interesting, Tony said. The aliens had no way of knowing that human ships were already moving into position. The Council fleet had been so focused on establishing their perfect blockade that they had missed the subtle redeployment of human forces. Ships that appeared to be on routine patrol missions were actually taking up carefully planned positions. Tony received a coded message from Earth Command that evening. The message was short and simple. Prepare for Operation Breakthrough. Human convoy will attempt blockade run at Wolf 359 in 48 hours. Tony shared the message with his senior staff. Lieutenant Brooks looked worried. Sir, Wolf 359 is heavily defended. The aliens have almost 50 ships there. Yes, Tony agreed. And Admiral Carter is sending exactly 3 ships to break through. 3 ships against 50? Brooks asked. That seems like suicide. Tony smiled. Amy, you're thinking like the aliens do. You're assuming this is going to be a fair fight. He called up a display showing the 3 human ships that would attempt the breakthrough. The heavy cruiser UES Vengeance, the destroyer UES Lightning, and the frigate UES Storm. The Council is about to learn something important about human military doctrine, Tony said. We don't believe in fair fights. We believe in winning. As the 48-hour countdown began, Tony continued monitoring the alien fleet. They maintained their perfect formations and predictable patterns, completely unaware that they were about to face an enemy unlike anything in their experience. The aliens had brought enough ships to defeat any conventional fleet. What they hadn't prepared for was fighting humans who had no intention of being conventional. The real war was about to begin. Captain Roy Johnson sat in his command chair aboard the heavy cruiser UES Vengeance and studied the tactical display one more time. 47 alien ships were waiting for him at Wolf 359. Their formation was perfect, just like the textbooks said it should be. The aliens had positioned themselves in 3 defensive rings round the jump point, ready to destroy any human ship that tried to break through their blockade. All ships report ready, Captain, said his communications officer, Lieutenant Karen Miller. Roy nodded and opened a channel to his small task force. Lightning, Storm, this is Vengeance. Remember, we stick to the plan no matter what happens. The aliens think they know how we fight. Let's show them how wrong they are. Captain Beth Turner's voice came from the destroyer Lightning. Copy that. Vengeance, my people are ready. Captain Dan Cooper spoke from the frigate Storm. Storm ready for action, sir. 3 human ships against 47 alien vessels. By any normal military calculation, it should have been a massacre. Roy smiled grimly. Good thing humans didn't believe in normal military calculations. Begin the approach, Roy ordered. The Human ships moved toward the jump point at standard speed. To the aliens watching, it must have looked like a routine convoy run. Roy knew that Admiral Korthvel would be expecting him to turn back. When he saw the size of the alien fleet, that was what any reasonable commander would do. Roy Johnson had never been accused of being reasonable. The first alien challenge came when they were still 2,000,000 kilometers from the jump point. Admiral Korthvel's face appeared on Roy's main screen. Human vessels. You are approaching a restricted area, the Zanari Admiral said in his musical voice. Turn back immediately or you will be fired upon. Admiral, Roy replied politely, we're just a peaceful convoy trying to reach the Tau Ceti system. Surely you can let 3 small ships pass through. Absolutely not, Admiral Korthvel said. The blockade is complete. No human ship may leave your territory. Well, Roy said with a shrug, I guess we'll have to see about that. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. Commander Price, are our friends in position? Commander Nancy Price checked her displays. All stealth drones are deployed and ready. Captain, the aliens still don't know they're there. Roy had spent the last week secretly placing dozens of small robotic drones around the Wolf 359 system. The drones were too small for alien sensors to detect, but each one carried powerful weapons and sophisticated targeting systems. It was a trick no alien species had ever seen before. Weapons officer, Roy called out. Prepare the opening salvo. Lieutenant Commander Frank Wilson brought up his targeting display. All missile tubes loaded with kinetic kill vehicles, sir. Each missile contains 24 independent warheads with adaptive AI guidance systems. The alien fleet began moving into attack formation. Roy watched as they arranged themselves exactly the way their tactical manuals said they should. Tight formations for mutual support. Energy shields overlapping for maximum protection. It was textbook Council military doctrine that it was also exactly what Roy had been hoping for. Fire. He ordered. The Vengeance launched 60 missiles in the first salvo. Each missile immediately split into 24 smaller warheads, creating a cloud of nearly 1,500 independent projectiles racing toward the alien fleet. The warheads used advanced AI to select their own targets and coordinate their attacks. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Their defensive systems were designed to stop large missiles or energy beams, not swarms of small, intelligent projectiles. Admiral Korthvel's perfectly organized formation suddenly found itself under attack by weapons that could think and adapt faster than his crews could respond. Lightning. Execute Maneuver Alpha, Roy commanded. Captain Turner's destroyer did something that made several alien tactical officers have nervous breakdowns. She used her ship's gravity drive not for movement, but to create a localized distortion in spacetime. Incoming alien energy beams bent around her ship like light around a black hole, while her own kinetic weapons accelerated to even higher velocities. Storm, deploy the Luck fields, Roy ordered. Captain Cooper's frigate activated humanity's most unusual defensive system. The Luck field generators created probability distortions that made unlikely events more likely to happen. In practical terms, it meant that alien weapons had a mysterious tendency to malfunction or miss their targets. By impossibly small margins, the alien fleet was in chaos. Their neat formations were breaking apart as ships tried to avoid the swarms of kinetic projectiles. Their communication systems were being jammed by electronic warfare drones they couldn't even see. Their energy weapons were being deflected by physics they didn't understand. Sir, Commander Price reported 17 alien ships destroyed, 23 disabled. The remaining 7 are trying to retreat. Roy looked at his chronometer. The entire engagement had lasted 12 minutes. Let them go, he ordered. Make sure they get good sensor recordings of what just happened. Lieutenant Miller looked up from her communications console. Captain, we're receiving surrender signals from the damaged alien ships. Acknowledge their surrenders, Roy said. Send medical assistance to any ship that requests it. We're not barbarians. As the human ships moved through the jump point and continued on their mission, Roy thought about what had just happened. The aliens had brought enough firepower to destroy a dozen conventional fleets, but they had been fighting by rules that humans had never agreed to follow. The alien commanders had expected a traditional space battle, ships lining up and trading shots until one side gave up. Instead, they had faced an enemy that used deception, advanced technology, and tactics they had never imagined. Captain Turner's voice came over the communication system. "Vengeance, lightning here." "That was almost too easy. Don't get overconfident," Beth Roy replied. "This was just the first test. The real challenge comes when they figure out how to adapt to our methods." Captain Cooper joined the conversation. "Sir, do you think they will adapt?" Roy considered the question. The aliens were intelligent, and their technology was advanced, but they had been fighting the same way for thousands of years. Could they change their entire military culture quickly enough to counter human innovations? "They'll try," Roy said finally, "but adaptation takes time, and time is something we're not going to give them." The news of the blockade's failure spread through the Galactic Council, faster than light-speed communications could carry it. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a Council military operation had been completely defeated. The impossible had happened. 3 human ships had destroyed or disabled 47 alien vessels. Without taking significant damage, emergency meetings were called on every Council world. Military commanders demanded explanations that their staff officers couldn't provide. How had the humans done it? What weapons had they used? What tactics had allowed such a small force to achieve such a devastating victory? But the most important question was one that few Council leaders were brave enough to ask out loud. If 3 human ships could do this much damage, what could 50 human ships do? Admiral Korthvel sat in his damaged flagship and wrote his report to the Council. He had seen his perfect formation destroyed by weapons that seemed to violate the basic rules of space combat. He had watched human ships perform maneuvers that his own science officers said were impossible. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had revealed that everything the Galactic Council thought it knew about warfare was wrong. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about what happened when you threatened a species that had spent its entire history fighting for survival, and the humans were just getting started. Dr. Peter Hayes walked slowly through the grand halls of the Galactic Council building. On Kepler Prime, the last time he had been here, the alien leaders had been confident and dismissive. They had spoken to him like he was a child who needed to be taught proper behavior. Today, everything was different. The news of the Wolf 359 battle had reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. 3 human ships had destroyed nearly 50 Council vessels without breaking a sweat. The impossible had happened, and now the entire galactic community was in shock. Council Speaker Vorthka waited for Peter in the main assembly chamber. The tall, reptilian alien who had once spoken so confidently about human disarmament now looked nervous and uncertain round the chamber. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in worried silence. Ambassador Hayes, Vorthka, began carefully. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Peter took his seat at the human delegation table. "Speaker Vorthka, I have to admit I'm curious about this sudden change in attitude." The Council Speaker's throat sacs inflated slightly. "A sign of stress among his people. Ambassador, it appears that we may have miscalculated the situation regarding human military capabilities." Peter almost smiled. 3 weeks ago, these same aliens had been demanding that humanity surrender all of its warships. Now they were using diplomatic language to admit they had made a terrible mistake. "What exactly are you proposing?" Peter asked. Vorthka looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. None of them seemed eager to speak first. Finally, the Zanari representative, Admiral Korthvel himself, stood up. The alien officer looked tired and defeated. "Ambassador Hayes," Admiral Korthvel said, "I was present at Wolf 359. I commanded the blockade fleet that your people defeated." "I heard about that," Peter replied neutrally. "I hope your casualties weren't too severe." 17 ships destroyed, 23 disabled, the Admiral said quietly. "Over 3,000 Council personnel killed or wounded, and your people offered medical assistance to our survivors." Peter nodded. "That's standard human military procedure, Admiral. We don't fight civilians or helpless enemies." "That," said a new voice, "is exactly what we need to discuss." Peter turned to see who had spoken. It was General Thaxra of the Grix warrior caste, a species that prided itself on military prowess. The large, armored alien stood up slowly. Ambassador, General Thaxra continued. My people have studied the recordings from Wolf 359. What your ships did should have been impossible according to everything we know about space combat. How so? Peter asked, though he already knew the answer. Your tactics, your weapons, your entire approach to warfare, the Grix general explained. You fight like your species' survival depends on every battle. We fight like war is a game with rules and limitations. Council Speaker Vorthka cleared his throat. Ambassador Hayes, the Council has voted to formally withdraw Resolution 2847. The ban on human warships is hereby rescinded. Peter sat back in his chair. Just like that? Not just like that, Vorthka admitted. We would like to propose a new arrangement, a mutual defense partnership between humanity and the Galactic Council. What kind of partnership? Peter asked. The fallen trade representative, a small creature named Pixlan, spoke up. We want to hire human ships to protect Council trade routes. Your military effectiveness far exceeds anything we can field ourselves. Peter was quiet for a moment, thinking about what this meant. Let me make sure I understand. 3 weeks ago, you wanted to destroy our ships because they were too dangerous. Now you want to hire those same ships to protect you. Yes, Vorthka said simply. We realize now that having humanity as an ally is much preferable to having you as an enemy. Over the following weeks, the transformation of galactic politics was remarkable. Human ships that had been banned from Council space were suddenly welcomed with full honors at alien ports. Human officers were invited to study at Council military academies, and alien officers came to Earth to learn human tactical doctrine. Admiral Lisa Carter found herself hosting a constant stream of alien visitors aboard her flagship. The aliens were fascinated by human military thinking. They asked endless questions about concepts like acceptable casualties, overwhelming force, and victory at any cost. Your species has a very different relationship with warfare, observed Colonel Nexky of the Zanari Defense Force during one visit. For us, war is a political tool with clearly defined objectives. For you, war is about survival. Every war is about survival if you lose, Admiral Carter replied. That's why we don't plan to lose. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been promoted to Admiral after the crisis, was assigned to the new Joint Council Defense Command. His job was to coordinate human and alien forces for mutual protection. It was a role that would have been unthinkable just months before. The biggest challenge, Jake told his staff, is teaching our new allies to think like humans when they fight. Lieutenant Colonel Nancy Price, who had transferred from ship duty to the Joint Command, nodded in agreement. They're used to limited engagement rules and predictable outcomes. The idea of total warfare is completely foreign to them. Maybe that's not entirely bad, Jake said thoughtfully. They've maintained galactic peace for thousands of years using their methods. We just need to teach them how to win when peace fails. The real test of the new alliance came 6 months later when a hostile species called the Devourers invaded from outside the galaxy. The Devourers were a race of machine intelligences that consumed entire worlds to fuel their expansion. They had no interest in negotiation or surrender. The combined human council fleet that met them at the Rigel system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human tactical doctrine provided the strategy, while alien technology and numbers provided the tools. Captain Roy Johnson, now commanding a task force of mixed human and alien ships, led the defense. Remember, Roy told his mixed crew over the communication system, the Devourers don't follow anyone's rules. This is exactly the kind of fight humans were built for. The battle was fierce and desperate. The Devourers fought with mechanical precision and no regard for losses. But they had never faced an enemy that combined human ruthlessness with alien resources. The combined fleet used human design tactics executed by crews that had learned to think like humans. When the fighting was over, the Devourer invasion fleet was completely destroyed. Not a single enemy ship escaped to report back to their home territory. The galaxy was safe, and the credit belonged to both human strategy and alien courage. Dr. Hayes stood once again in the council chamber, but this time as an equal partner rather than a petitioner. The aliens who had once feared human warships now looked to humanity for protection and leadership. Ambassador, Council Speaker Vorthka said, "The galaxy owes humanity a great debt. Your people have shown us that there is more than one way to keep the peace." Peter smiled. "Speaker, I think we've all learned something important. Humans may build dangerous ships and fight dangerous wars, but we're much better to have as friends than as enemies." Around the chamber, alien representatives nodded in agreement. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactics, but their absolute refusal to give up when protecting what they valued. The question of whether human warships were too dangerous had been answered. They were indeed dangerous to anyone foolish enough to threaten the peace. That humans and their allies were now committed to protecting together. The galaxy was safer because humanity refused to be defenseless, and that, everyone agreed, was exactly how it should be.